Hey guys, welcome to Success Cards. And today we're with Brent Meredith, covering topic number 34, business to business selling. Brent Meredith is someone who's a good friend of mine and also an investor in one of my other companies, GameTree. Brent is a very, very, very successful business to business salesperson. So I actually asked him if he would be the one to provide the quote that we put on the card. Brent, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, John.
So your last company you were with was Amplitude, which GameTree is a customer of, and you were the top salesperson, as I understand, and it rose to be a unicorn company very quickly. And now you're at Sneak, where I believe you said you were just in your first year the top salesperson on the East Coast, and that again has gone to become a, what did you say, $8.5 billion company within 6 years?
That's correct, yeah.
So guys, Brent, thanks to him, is coming to share with you guys some information on business to business selling to supplement the information in the cards. So Brent, you had said that the most important thing about selling to another business is finding the person with the most pain around the problem your solution solves. Will you talk a little bit more around that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're trying to sell into any sort of business, whether it's 12 people or 10,000 people or more, you ideally want to find someone in that organization that would use your product. And if you're selling a product that's a competitor for another product, you would imagine that the person you're trying to sell to might be using one of those products. And what you want to identify is if they have any sort of pain with that product at all. You want to tell them what you do, but then start asking questions about how they do things, right? And if you already know how your product is different or better, you can interject that, right, to this new person you've met. And by doing that, you're able to, catch their interest, because people don't care to talk to. They don't care unless you can solve a problem they have. There are some instances where they don't know they have a problem, which you're probably selling a very innovative product, in which case you'll need to get them, hooked a little bit differently. You need to demonstrate value a little bit more quickly. And you can kind of imagine, let's just take a lumberjack, for example, and he's in the 1800s and he's using an axe to chop down a tree. And I walk up to him and I say, hey, I'm selling chainsaws. This will chop down the tree in, 10 minutes. Versus however long it takes you to chop down that tree, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. And he's going to look at that chainsaw and be like, no, I don't need that. I can't swing that thing. And then I'm going to be like, hold on. I'm going to pull the chain and show him how it works. And then he's going to be like, oh, now I do have pain. So finding that pain is very, very important.
Very interesting. So it sounds like identifying pain and also taking a broader view and, like you said, imagining the competition. I'd like to dive into also, how do you find out who these people are that have the pain point and actually get in touch with them?
Yeah. So the first part about identifying the person you're selling to is understanding who buys your product typically. So it's going to take some trial and error, and you're going to need to reach out to a lot of people in the tech world that I work in. We do a lot of our prospecting on LinkedIn. We'll search through LinkedIn. You can upgrade your LinkedIn to business accounts, which gives you more filtering options. It doesn't cost a lot. It's a good investment. It'll enable you to see kind of who's who on LinkedIn. You don't necessarily need to pay for the extra, but it helps. And then you can, add those people or send them messages, whatever you like. And then from there, as you kind of start to book meetings that way, then you'll start to narrow it down to what your target market is. You'll start to see patterns around the type of persona that tends to pay attention to your product and messaging.
Diving into the card now. So I wrote here, use a CRM, customer relationship management system, or document for lead tracking. What do you think about this? Will you elaborate on it?
Yeah, so if you're the business owner and you're starting off with a small business, or you're a large business that's up and running, you need some way to keep track of your customers, who they are, their contact information, the interactions you've had with them, and especially if they're spending money with you, you want to be able to keep track of that. So CRMs are an acronym for customer relationship management. You may have heard of companies like Salesforce or an up-and-comer called Braze. There's tons and tons of messaging systems out there that can integrate with these CRMs as well, so you can automate messaging through them in a marketing capacity. But essentially what they'll do is you will input their information or manually, or you can upload it in some cases, depending on where you're keeping the data now, and it will store it there. But especially as your business grows, you're going to need to think about the people that are going to be kind of coming in and helping you run this business in the future, and they need context of what's happened with that person or that account, if you will. So generally in a CRM, if you're doing B2B sales, you'll have, different accounts. Those are the companies you're trying to sell to, and then you'll have different people associated with them in that account.
I find these are also useful in keeping track of your network, even just as an entrepreneur or a CEO or any business person, just to keep notes on people over the years, because you never know when they're going to come back in handy or something might remind you about them. And if you don't keep that information logged, then a lot of times it disappears.
Yeah, that's your little black book.
So another point is identify key decision makers and convert an internal evangelist to lobby your deal. I guess we covered that a bit, but a question that pops out of that is, how do you actually figure out the internal structure of the company? Like, who actually is the one that has the pain point?
Yeah, it ties back to the first question. You're right, around how do you, sell something in the first place. So you have to find the person that has pain or the group of people that have pain. And then generally, businesses don't make decisions on their own. You reach out to someone and they say they want it. That doesn't mean they're going to buy it. You're going to have to build that person up, and get them involved in your product and interested enough to bring their colleagues into the place. Because the chances of you getting a hold of the decision maker who actually has the budget, depending on what you're selling to, is pretty slim. Me, I sell to really big companies. It almost never happens. I'm always dealing with someone lower and building my way up. Right. And that person, we call that person, the lingo for it in sales is your champion. This person that is, your right-hand person at that company that is helping you, figure out to navigate the company, the structure, how they buy, how they try different things. In my case, try different software. And if you don't have someone like that, it's very hard to get a deal done unless that company has an active project evaluating products like yours, and then you're involved in that evaluation.
Next up is introducing a small, simple deal first makes it easier to upgrade them later. What do you think about this?
Yeah, so, I've been selling for a very, very long time, and 99% of the deals that I do are relatively smaller deployments in comparison to what the company could grow into. Most companies will not throw all their money at you for all of the product all at once. They're going to buy a small portion or a testing, or they'll call it a pilot or a proof of concept, and they'll buy a smaller amount. They do this to protect themselves. They don't want to spend too much money on something in case it doesn't pan out, but kind of pull yourself back and try not to think about like, oh, I could do this bigger deal. If you can get the smaller deal faster, 99% of the times you should take it, because a bird in the hand is better than two in the bush, if you will. And there's also a phrase, a common saying in sales called "time kills all deals." So if you want to get things done as quickly as possible, even if you can kind of see a larger deal down the line, it just might take a lot longer. Take the smaller deal, build the relationship with the customer, help them get value from the product. And if they get value from the product, they're going to buy more.
Great advice. So don't be too greedy and don't overwhelm them or try to sell something bigger. It's better to just hook something small and then use that as bait for something bigger.
Exactly.
All right. Next up is you will need many meetings, end each with a clear objective for what the next touch point will be. Follow up within 24 hours with thanks, a summary, and action items.
Yeah. So customer experience is really important. You're going to go into these meetings and the people you may have never met, you just reached out to them on LinkedIn or email, you call them. And you need to immediately create rapport. So you need to go into this call with some idea of what you want to accomplish, because the person on the other end of the line might not know what they're there for, or they might have taken the call like, see what's up. They have no idea what they're getting themselves into. So you want to set the agenda up front. You want to say, hey, today, I want to ask you a few questions about how you're doing things today. And then I want to talk about our product. So definitely ask a few questions on how they do things relating to your product today up front. Don't spend too much time on it, but see if you can get a little bit of pain out. And then you go into your presentation or your talk or whatever it is, that's the meat of the meeting. And as you go through your slides, don't just kind of talk, don't just read through them and don't ask them to engage. You want to say, at certain sticking points, you want to say, what are your thoughts on this? Don't say, what do you think? Say, what are your thoughts? It just lands better and it gets more responses. And by asking those questions,
what do you think is a judgment? What are your thoughts? Is like an open-ended question.
Yes, and if you ask them throughout the meeting, instead of all up front, you're starting to pull different pain points out and you're trying to understand their business better.
Wow.
And so by the end of the meeting, you have your kill shot, right? So for example, I was on a call yesterday with a company that has a very immature security program, and he was starting listing competitors, and I knew One of them was a larger competitor that's been around for a long time, and they, but I know that the product isn't quite as innovative or as good. That's why my company, Network at Sneak, is growing so quickly. But he also mentioned a couple competitors that I know could cause me trouble, which are smaller companies. So since I found out during that call that he has a new program that he's starting out, he needs help, I offered something called professional services. And I said, Sneak, are a big enough company to have professional services. These people and these teams will come in and help you build out this program. This company can't help you do that. This company can't help you do that. Knowing full well that I was going to be able to disqualify, in his mind, out those smaller companies and leave me up against a larger competitor that I know I can beat because we're a more innovative product. And, I kind of slimmed down that competition by doing that.
So on that note, going into the prompts on the card, asking yourself the questions to really challenge yourself to think about these things, and then getting your input on this. The first one is, what is your competition selling to your target? How do you think about this? Why is it important?
So if you're selling a product and you don't know what else is out there, then you will seem ignorant. You need to be kind of an expert in your field and what your product does. So we'll go back to like the chainsaw axe scenario. If you're going into that scenario and you're selling the chainsaw, you need to know how the axe works. You need to know why the axe isn't efficient. You should know how long it takes someone on average to chop down a tree, so that you can say, hey, if your team uses these chainsaws, you'll be able to cut down 5 times as many trees in the same amount of time, and your revenue will go in.
Yeah.
So it's very important to understand your competition and be able to talk to it, because if you're going in blind, then you don't know what you're going to bump into. You might get lucky and you might not.
Next question is, what is their decision-making process, time frame, and budget?
So this is a tougher one to get to, and it usually bumps into at the later end of larger deal cycles. So if your product is, selling to large businesses, any kind of company over like 100 or 150 people is going to have some kind of decision process on who you're selling to. And likely if you're selling on the company you're selling to, it'll be like a VP or a CRO or a CFO, or maybe even a CEO that's signing off on it. But if you're especially, trying to forecast your revenue for investors, or you want to IPO, it's very important for your sales team to understand in what time frame they think that deal could possibly come in and sign. So you need to understand, what's their process. Do they need to try the product, or can they just sign up and pay for it? Do they have to go through a legal review to use your product? Are there security concerns around using your product? That's more applicable to software usually. And then how long does the actual signing process take? You might have someone tell you like, hey, the deal's done, we're ready to sign it. But the signing process at a 10,000 person company is sometimes 7 people and can take a week or 2. So understanding all those things will help you not only with your sanity, but also if you have really aggressive growth goals and you're forecasting to investors, this will help a lot.
And last question here is, how can you systematize and scale messaging and follow-ups?
Yeah, so there's a variety of tools that can help you do this. Even Google Calendar and Gmail, I think, have reminder sets in them, but there's tools like Outreach.io. There's companies like Braze and many others that can help you do sales marketing at scale, which means a salesperson can automate a series of emails that go out to the prospect, and they're very, very helpful. And if you depend on how many people you're talking to, these sorts of tools become really necessary, because you might forget to follow up with somebody.
There are also tools like Hunter.io that can pull out email addresses associated with the web domain. Do you use those as well?
Hunter.io, Zoom Info is probably the largest one in my field for collecting email addresses and phone numbers. There's another up and comer that I like called Lusha. And yeah, you find the people on LinkedIn or however you're going to find them, and then these other tools will help you get their contact information, like email addresses and phone numbers. And in some cases, you might just be able to buy a Zoom Info license, and you can just go in there and find people, because they have tools that help you map out organizations too. Just LinkedIn is usually more up to date than their data is.
Gotcha. Well, that covers the card. Thank you so much, Brent. Do you have any other topics that we haven't discussed yet that you think are important tactics, strategies, actionable items that are important to know, but maybe less common knowledge, either intuitively or based on the common literature that people otherwise find out there?
Yeah, I think sales when you're selling in general, some salespeople can be overly aggressive and kind of not helpful. And my mantra is always to give the people I'm talking to the best customer experience possible, which means, I talk to them on the phone, I talk to them on calls, I get them what they need, but I go out of my way to make sure that I'm getting them what they need and being very transparent about it. And a lot of times it means detailed follow-up emails, introducing them to people at my company that they need to meet to make a better decision for themselves, offering customer references so they can talk to other happy customers, offering whatever I can to help them make the decision easier.
How important are case studies or being able to reference similar clients?
It depends. In my experience, they don't help as much as you might think. They certainly create validation, but one of the worst things a salesperson can go into is saying, oh, hey, like we sell to this company, you're just like them. You probably have the same problems, because they don't. They do things differently. Their operations are differently. You could read the company's entire 401k and still know nothing about how they would buy or use your product. So it's better to meet someone, talk to them, and get that information out of them yourself, so that you don't because that can also come across as rude.
A last question I would like to ask you following up is, what do you think about relationships in the selling process?
I think they're very important. Just depending on what you're selling. If you're selling, a heavily commoditized product, like cloud storage, like Amazon, Google Cloud, relationships are very, very important, because the products are not that differentiated. So these guys are out there making a ton of money, but they're also on the road a lot. They're taking these guys out golfing, they're going to bars, and taking them out to dinner, and whatever they can to earn that person's business and trust, and they build friendships with these people. That's not always the case. Relationships don't. Sometimes people aren't interested in a relationship. They're interested in, will this product help me? And a lot of times, that sales process is exactly what I just described, is getting them all the information they need to make the best decision. But relationships and them liking you does always matter. So you want to, whether it's on Zoom or in person, you want to seem likable. If you can get in front of them in person, you should probably do it. COVID, threw a whole mess in that, but people are starting to go back to in-person meetings, and I mean a lot of them, like business conferences, like people are going around, like it's back to business as usual in a lot of cases.
All right, guys, you heard it. Start selling. Brent, thank you so much for sharing all this wisdom with us.
Happy to help, John.
For the audience, this will also be available as a YouTube video, a podcast, and a blog post, in case you'd ever like to subscribe to those platforms if it's ever more convenient. If you have any more questions on this topic, or would like to share any stories or tactics, please post those in the comments. And I and also Brent will take a look down the road and also be able to give you some responses. But Brent, thank you so much again for being with us.
Good to be here. Thanks, John.